Around 1990, a museum director in southeastern Wisconsin sent somebody down to catalog a shelf of old mammoth bones. They had been sitting in that building for 28 years, a partial thigh bone, some tusk fragments. Donated by a farmer, put on display for a while, then boxed up and shelved the way most donations are. He went down to look at them himself, and there were gashes cut into the bone, not gnaw marks, not cracks, narrow cuts with a V-shaped profile, the shape a stone edge leaves when somebody is working meat off a carcass. Somebody had butchered that animal. The bone had been in the building for 28 years, in a public museum, with the evidence sitting on the surface of it, and nobody had turned it over and looked. The county is Kenosha, in the extreme southeastern corner of Wisconsin, between Milwaukee and Chicago. Flat farm country, corn, soy, drainage ditches. And that is the part of this I keep coming back to. It was not hidden. It was cataloged, accessioned, and put on a shelf with a number on it. There are 4 butchered proboscideans in that county. 4. 2 of them have been properly excavated. 1 is a scatter of bones dug up over a century ago. The last one is still in the ground, and nobody can give you a clean explanation for why they are all in the same place. The bones on that shelf came out of a field in 1964. Frank Schaefer was laying drainage tile. The machinery went through something solid, and out came a piece of femur and some tusk. That is the normal way this happens, by the way. Almost nothing is found by archaeologists. It is found by farmers and machine operators and people digging ponds. Schaefer did the right thing and donated it to the Kenosha Public Museum. It went into a case. Then it came out of the case and went onto a shelf. 28 years. The man who eventually looked at it properly was Dan Joyce at the Kenosha Public Museum. Once he saw the cut marks, he had a problem. He had proof somebody had butchered a mammoth in that county and no idea where. A tiled field in 1964 leaves no marker. The farm had changed. 60 acres of corn look identical from one end to the other. What saved it was a map. A local man named Sander had sketched the find location back in 1964, roughly on paper, the way an interested amateur does. That map had survived. Joyce used it in 1991 to work out where to dig. Then it took 18 months. Him and a team of volunteers working a farm field, chasing a pencil line drawn 3 decades earlier. They found it. Under 2.5 feet of old soil was about 80% of a mammoth, an adult male, 36 years old when he died. And the reason it was in that condition is the same reason the cut marks were still readable. Shortly after the animal was butchered, the ground it was lying on flooded. A lake that has since dried up covered the whole thing in clay and sealed it. Clay is the opposite of sand. It does not move, it does not drain, and it does not let things drift between layers. If you are trying to prove an artifact was where you say it was, clay is the best ground you can possibly be standing on. The bones were disarticulated, pulled apart, not lying in the shape of an animal. Many of them carried the same V-shaped cuts he had seen on the shelf, and with them were fragments of 2 stone blades. Then the first radiocarbon dates came back at roughly 13,000 years. Joyce has been very open about what he thought at that point. His own line is that they had a Clovis date, so they thought they had a Clovis site, which would have been a good result. Clovis mammoth kills are rare and important. It would have been the eastern end of a known story. The next year they ran the bones again, this time using a technique that purifies the collagen protein out of the bone, so that what gets measured is the animal itself and nothing that's soaked into it afterwards. The new dates came back clustered around 14,500 years. That is not a small correction. It moved the site out of Clovis entirely and put it roughly 1,500 years before the first people were supposed to have arrived at all. Joyce did not have a Clovis site. He had something older and he had it by accident because the first number was wrong in the direction that made everybody comfortable. And while that excavation was still running, a man walked onto the site. John Hebior farmed the land. 3/4 of a mile away. He had heard what was going on at his neighbor's place. He said he had one too. In 1994, a team led by David Overstreet from Marquette University excavated the Hebior farm. What came out was about 90% of a mammoth, which makes it one of the most complete ever recovered on this continent. More cut marks, and a better toolkit. 2 crude bifaces and a flake lying with the bones. Then the dates came back, and Hebior was older than Schaefer, not by much, 150 to 200 years, which means this was not one event. 2 animals, 2 farms, 3/4 of a mile apart, separated by roughly 2 centuries. Somebody was doing this in that valley across generations. The cut marks went to Eileen Johnson at Texas Tech, who works on exactly this kind of damage. Her conclusion was that 2 different tools had been used, one for cutting, one for shaving meat off the bone. That distinction is worth sitting with. It is not the signature of somebody hacking at a dead animal with whatever they had. It is a division of labor between tools, which means the work had a method, and the method was known before the animal went down. Now the third and the fourth. The Fenske mastodon came out of Kenosha County in 1919. A femur, a vertebra, some fragments. It carries chop and cut marks consistent with butchery, and it dates to around 13,500 years. No stone tools were found with it, and a 4th site at Mud Lake in the same county. The Fenske location was searched again in the early 1990s with remote sensing equipment. They picked up anomalies. It has never been fully excavated, so there is a butchered mastodon still sitting in the ground in Kenosha County, and it has been sitting there, known about, since the First World War. Now the objections, and they are real. A cut mark on a bone is an interpretation. Carnivores chew bone, and their teeth leave punctures and scrapes. Sediment presses down for thousands of years and cracks it. Plows hit things. So does drainage tiling machinery, which is exactly what exposed the Schaefer bones in the first place. Every one of those can produce damage that looks like a tool mark to somebody who wants it to. And there is a published position in this field arguing that the case for pre-Clovis occupation of eastern North America is weak, and that these sites are part of what is weak about it. That is a serious argument, and it deserves to be said out loud. What the Kenosha sites have going for them is not any single piece of evidence. It is that the pieces are difficult to explain separately. The clay seal, which makes intrusion from above very hard to argue. The disarticulation, which is not how animals die naturally. The V-profile marks, which a specialist attributed to 2 distinct tools. The stone artifacts lying with the bones at both farms. And the dates, which came from purified collagen and which moved in the inconvenient direction rather than the convenient one. You can attack any one of those. Attacking all 5 at once at 2 separate farms is harder. And I want to be clear about something because this subject attracts people who want it to mean something it does not. Pushing the date back does not take anything away from anybody. It makes indigenous presence on this continent older, not shorter. If people were butchering mammoths in Wisconsin 14,500 years ago, then somebody's ancestors were standing in that valley 1,500 years earlier than the textbooks allowed. Which brings me back to the part I cannot get past. 4 butchered animals in one county. 2 excavated, 1 dug up in 1919 and never finished. 1 more at Mud Lake. That is either an extraordinary concentration of ancient activity in one small stretch of Wisconsin, or it is an ordinary concentration that happens to have been noticed because one museum director looked closely at something on his own shelf. I lean towards the second, and it is the more unsettling of the two. Because if Kenosha County is normal, then the reason we do not have 40 of these is not that they are not there. It is that nobody has picked up the bones and turned them over. Tell me which way you lean on that one. Is Kenosha County unusual, or is it just the county that got looked at? Subscribe if you want more of these, because there are a lot of them, and I am working through them one at a time. And if there is a mammoth or a mastodon in your local museum, or one that came out of a field near you, I want to hear about it. Tell me the county. Thanks for watching.